Thank you so much. Merci, Maureen. Thank you, Maureen. It's great to be here in the Big Nickel with all of you. Who's ready to axe the carbon tax? Who's ready to feel safe in the neighborhoods in which you live? And who's ready for affordable homes so that your 35-year-old son can move out of the basement? You know, it's funny, I was thinking just the other day, Trudeau promised change. Instead, he took the change out of your pocket, right? And as I was coming into town, I was thinking about all the money he's taxing out of your pocket and worried that maybe we'll have to get a security guard to protect the Big Nickel to make sure that it's not taxed out of the city, right? I think it's probably losing some of its buying power every day, isn't it? And so he decided to fire 7 of his ministers. You see that? Does that sound like a government that's functioning well to you? You know, he's got to go. Because when there's a sinking ship, you don't fire the crew, you fire the captain, right? So I was in the Sioux earlier today. Great people there. I'll tell you about my day. Got there. We're supposed to have an interview with some local journalists. We had to change the location because the cafe we were going to go to was robbed early this morning. The window was broken glass everywhere. So we ended up going over to a Tim Hortons. And there, Tim Hortons, good place to caffeinate. I got there. Met a 42-year-old carpenter living in his car. Can you imagine that? And then we went over to get some breakfast, late breakfast, and as we were leaving the restaurant, one of the waitresses who hadn't seen me there but had since heard that I was there came running out and waved at our little minivan that we're driving around. So I stopped in the middle of the street so I could at least say hi. I got out and ran over. She gave me a hug. And she said, you got to get him out, get you in, and fix this. Fix this. Now, you know what was funny about that sentence structure? She didn't even need to tell me what this was, right? It was just so obvious because everything feels broken. You look around you. Have you ever seen the country like this? This is not normal. We can't let it become normal. After 8 years of Justin Trudeau, everything costs more. Work doesn't pay. Housing costs have doubled. People are living in their cars and in tents. Our streets are overtaken by crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. He attacks our freedoms, divides our people to distract from his failures. But ladies and gentlemen, Canada was not like this before Justin Trudeau, and it won't be like this after he's gone. Absolutely. We're going to turn the hurt that he has caused into the hope that Canadians need. We're going to do it based on common sense, and that's why I like being here in the Big Nickel. Now, I'm a relatively new father. We've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, so there are going to be some dad jokes today, okay? The people here have a lot of common sense, C-E-N-T-S. The ability to mine nickel and other minerals out of the ground requires a lot of brain power, but also a lot of know-how. And that's what we're going to apply to solve the problems our government has given us today. There's not a lot of common sense. In fact, common sense is not common in government, and that is exactly how we got into this mess. And the way we'll get out of it is by relying on the same principles that allowed our ancestors in places like this to dig mines and build their economies, that allowed the farmers of the West to produce the grains that end up on our table, that allowed the builders in the southwestern Ontario who created our mighty manufacturing sector, that allowed our East Coast fishermen to pull the catch out of the sea and bring it home. The common sense, le gros bon sens qui a permis les Québécois de défendre leur culture et la langue française pendant des centaines d'années et de bâtir une économie innovatrice. The great common sense of the common people is what is going to get this country back on track. Let's start with the cost of living. We're going to bring home lower prices by axing Trudeau's carbon tax, aren't we? Remember that tax that was supposed to make you better off? You thought, oh yeah, you're going to get more money. It was like, you got that. You ever got one of those emails from a long-lost uncle who says if you just give him the password to your bank account, he's going to deposit a massive fortune into it, right? That was the carbon tax. Said if you just pay higher gas, heat, and grocery bills, he's going to send you a check. And the check is going to be bigger than the cost, right? Well, we never believed that. That's trickle-down government. They take the money from the working people, give it to the federal government. It funnels through all the bureaucracy. Everybody gets a share, and then a few cents trickle down to the bottom of it all. Well, turns out it was all a lie. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has produced studies showing that the first carbon tax costed more to 60% of people than it would pay back. And then there's a second carbon tax, which doesn't include any rebate at all. When these two Trudeau taxes are fully implemented, it will cost 61 cents a litre and cost over $2,000 net for every family in Ontario. It will be more expensive for northern and rural families who have to travel longer distances, heat more space, in colder temperatures, and buy food that had to be trucked and trained a longer distance. So the northern people, the rural people, are going to pay more than anyone else for doing the very things they have no choice but to do. You have to heat your home in January in Sudbury, don't you? You have to eat, and if you tax the farmer who produced the food and the trucker who ships the food, you tax all who buy the food, and you need to drive to work, right? And you need a truck. How many of you have a truck around here? Right. Now, Trudeau says he's going to ban your truck and have you drive a Tesla instead. How's that going to work? Not gonna happen. You're not buying a Tesla? No. Yeah. That's right. A Tesla made in China, with batteries that are refined burning coal, supposedly to help the environment, right? I'll tell you the story of the little miracles of Manotick. Anybody been to Manotick, south of Ottawa? Beautiful little village. And they grow tomatoes in the greenhouse there. They release CO2 into that greenhouse, and that CO2 is absorbed by the plant life. It doesn't even go into the atmosphere, and Trudeau is taxing the CO2. It's like he missed that day in science class. And so what does that mean? That the Manotick tomato is more expensive in Manotick than the Mexican tomato in Manotick, because in Mexico they don't pay the Trudeau tax. So he sends the price signal that Canadians should buy the tomato trucked and trained all the way from South America, nearly South America, Mexico, burning fossil fuels to power up those trains and trucks, emitting into the atmosphere, sending our money out of the country. It makes no sense. And then he wants to put in a fertilizer mandate that will reduce the productivity of our farmers, forcing them to drive their tractors and combines over longer distances, burning yet more fuel, raising prices higher, and driving our food production out of the country. Ladies and gentlemen, my common sense plan is to axe the fertilizer mandate, axe the tax, bring home more affordable food, and produce that food in Canada. Bring it home. Axe the tax. 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 And we're going to bring back the purchasing power of our money, right? Anybody got a quarter they can lend me? No. No, everybody's broke. All right. All right. Just a quarter. I promise I'll pay it back. I'm not a liberal. Come on. Just a quarter. He's got a toonie. What's that? She's got a debit card over here. Thank you. You ever notice these little crevices along the edge of a quarter? You know what that's for? You know what it is? It's to make sure that people don't clip off the edges. And you know why they invented that and where they invented it? In England. Actually, it was under Henry VIII. Yes, because back then they had the British pound. It was a pound of silver. And what he used to do is he'd have his tax collectors bring in the pounds, and then they'd clip off the edges. And then they'd melt down that silver to make more coins because he was running out of silver, right? Well, people started to catch on. So what they said is, we'll bring in a new rule, and the rule is that you have to have these edges on it so that if anybody cuts off the edge, then it will be noticed immediately because there won't be any more of these crevices. So it was a good idea. And to this day, it is a criminal offense, I'm not exaggerating, in the criminal code to clip coins. You clip off the edge of this coin, you can be charged under the criminal code. It is still in our code we inherited from the Old English. Now, this is the interesting thing. When the government creates more cash, they devalue the cash. So our money supply went from 1.8 million to 1.8 trillion to 2.4 trillion in the last 3 years. Okay? That's because Trudeau had the central bank printing money to fund his deficits. So what does that mean? $600 billion more money, a 32% increase in the money supply, during which time the economy grew by 4%. So the amount of money grew 8 times faster than the amount of the stuff money buys. What's the effect? Well, if you have 10 loaves of bread and $10, it's $1 a loaf. You double the number of dollars to 20, you still have 10 loaves of bread. Now it's $2 a loaf. It bids up the cost of everything. That's why we have all this inflation. But effectively clips your money, your purchasing power. He's effectively clipped off the edge of your quarter because it buys less. Food prices are up almost 25% in the last 3 years, which means that quarter buys what 20 cents would have bought back in the year 2020. In other words, he's clipping the edges off the coins. You go to jail if you clip the coin, but when the politicians do it, they get reelected for it, right? That's what happens when they abuse our money. So let's talk common sense solutions. My common sense plan is to get rid of the deficits that necessitated the money creation in the first place. Let's cap the spending with a dollar-for-dollar law requiring that politicians find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending, just like how you run your household finances. You know, if the single mother that I met today, who came out, the waitress, she wants to have a new porch. Well, maybe she passes up on the vacation. Or maybe she gets a deal on the wood for the porch and on the vacation so that she can do both within the budget. That's how small businesses and farmers operate. Politicians, though, are the only creatures in the universe that don't have to live with the universal law of scarcity, right? Every other creature, the fish in the seas, the birds in the trees, have to make maximum use of scarce resources. The politician just passes it on in taxes, debt, and inflation. Not anymore. The dollar-for-dollar law will force scarcity on the politician so that he has to make the same common sense trade-offs to get more value for less money. We did this when we were in government. I was the Minister for Social Services. The Canadian National Institute for the Blind came to me and said, "You're sending out these books to blind people on CD cassette. So they have to wait for them to come in the mail, and then you have to buy all the plastic and all the materials, and you have to pay Canada Post to deliver it. We've got a technology that will help you deliver it by email. And by the way, we want you to sign a deal with all the other English-speaking countries to share books. So if they've recorded an audiobook that we don't have, or we've done one they don't have, we'll share them across borders." All of a sudden, we had 400% more books for visually impaired Canadians, and we cut the cost by 80%, proving you can find ways to do more with less if you force, by legal discipline, the politicians to look in their own budgets, spend what is in their departments, rather than going to the people with more inflation, more debt, and more taxes. You've been pinching your pennies long enough. It's time for government to start pinching its pennies too. Yeah. And then we're going to get some of the waste out of there. We're going to get rid of things like the $54 million ArriveCan app, right? What a waste of money. The $35 billion infrastructure bank that hasn't finished a single infrastructure project but gave bonuses to its executives. We're going to get rid of that bank altogether, aren't we? We're going to stop sending our money out of the country to foreign dictatorships, aren't we? Bring our money home. Bring it home. Bring it home. Bring it home. Bring it home. $200 million for the Asian Infrastructure Bank, controlled by Beijing, whose stated purpose is to build back the old ancient Silk Route that the Chinese Empire used to take its products across Eurasia and make fortunes to expand their empire. President Xi wants to bring it back, and he wants us to pay for it. And guess what? He convinced Justin Trudeau to send him $200 million. Isn't this incredible? This is to build pipelines in Asia when we can't even build pipelines in Canada. This is crazy. We're going to axe these kinds of wasteful expenditures. We're going to repatriate our dollars. And we're going to make sure that we never again send our money abroad to work against our interests. Our money is hard-earned, and charity starts at home, doesn't it? Charity starts at home. And we'll get our central bank back to its original mandate. That purpose is to keep inflation low. During 25 years, from the early 90s till 2015, the bank kept inflation below 2%. And it worked. Our money retained its value. It had one job: to protect our money, not to promote government spending or to print cash for politicians like Trudeau. Our central bank will protect your money and work for you rather than for him. And by the way, I will ban a central bank digital currency from ever happening. Yeah. You know what we're also going to do? Thank you. He just said I just got his vote. Good. That's great. It's nice to win votes by getting rid of spending. Most politicians go around trying to give checks away to buy votes. Doesn't work. It's your money. It's not my money. It's not his money. He acts like he's so generous. It's easy to be generous with other people's money, right? So he takes money out of one pocket and gives you a smaller amount back in the other, and he expects you to thank him for it. Now, we're not going to let that happen. Instead of creating more cash, we're going to create more of what cash buys, grow more food, build more homes, and produce more energy here in Canada. That's where... So this is the other side of the coin when it comes to inflation. Remember my analogy about the 10 loaves of bread and $10? What if instead of doubling the number of dollars, we doubled the number of loaves of bread we produced? Right? And we had $10 and 20 loaves, all of a sudden it's 50 cents a loaf of bread. We want to grow our output more than we grow the amount of money, and the purchasing power of the money will grow along with it. So how do we do that? Well, it starts by rewarding hard work. You know, all these economists are scratching their head and saying, why don't we have enough workers to fill all the positions? Well, because we punish work. We live in a country where work no longer pays. So this waitress who came running out of the restaurant this morning, I don't know her personal situation, but I'm just going to imagine she earns $25 an hour, okay? She earns, so I'm just going to, okay. Let's assume she earned $25 an hour. Let me tell you how bad it is for someone who earns $25 an hour, because that sounds like a lot of money. That brings you to 60 grand a year. You can't even begin to afford a down payment with 60 grand a year. So let's assume that she's doing really well. And that's how much she makes, just for the sake of this argument. According to Finance Canada, if she goes out and earns another dollar, she loses 80 cents on that dollar because she's clawed back on her child benefit. She pays income tax, payroll tax, and gas and carbon tax to get to work. So we call this the meter, marginal effective tax rate. The only difference between this meter and a parking meter is that a parking meter you pay to park, a work meter you pay to work, right? So here's my common sense plan. We're going to reform the clawbacks of our benefits and cut income taxes so that you bring home more of each dollar you earn, and hard work once again pays off in this country. Yeah. Hard work should pay off. People out there who are working 2, 3 jobs, who are putting in that extra hour, should be able to get ahead, and we should be allowing people to earn their full potential. Think of the brilliant immigrants we have who have skills as doctors and nurses. And here we are sitting in waiting rooms for 24 hours to see a doctor or even a nurse, and we have a doctor shortage. Meanwhile, there are 20,000 immigrant doctors, 32,000 immigrant nurses banned from working because there's no simple way to test their qualifications. We have something in the trades. It's called the Red Seal. Any Red Seal tradesmen here? There we are. Give them a round of applause. These are the people who build stuff. So, in 1952, 70 years ago, all 10 provinces, all the territories, and the feds came together and agreed on red seals for every regulated trade. You can take exams to prove you're qualified, get that red seal, get the ticket, work anywhere in Canada. There's no such thing for the professions. My common sense plan is to work with the provinces on a blue seal so that immigrant doctors and nurses can take a test, prove they're qualified, within 2 months, get to work, treating our patients, earning big, powerful paychecks. It makes sense, and we need the doctors and nurses in our hospitals. And by the way, another simple way to get more doctors and nurses is to get rid of these ridiculous mandates, right? Absolutely. Get rid of these mandates. We're going to bring home more powerful paychecks for people in cities like Sudbury, mining towns. Our government stands in the way of mining today. It takes up to 25 years to get a mining permit. So here we import all these minerals from other countries that we have right beneath our feet. We have the best miners, the best businesses, the best geologists who could help us responsibly mine these minerals and enrich communities, fight poverty, but we leave it in the ground under Justin Trudeau. That's why we have, for example, he loves the electric cars, the lithium. We have the 6th biggest supply on planet Earth. 0 got mined in 2021. We have 1,300 trillion cubic feet of natural gas right beneath our feet. We did not export a single foot of it off of our shores. Instead, Putin dominates the market. The Japanese Prime Minister, the German Chancellor came to Canada, and they said, we need your gas to break our dependence. Trudeau said, there's no business case. Nobody told the Americans, who built 7 export terminals. Nobody told the Qataris, who doubled their production. Nobody told the Germans, who built an import terminal in 194 days. We have all the advantages, the shortest shipping distances to Asia and Europe from North America. We have clean hydroelectricity to liquefy this stuff. And how do you liquefy gas? You cool it down. What do we have in Canada? Cold weather. I'm told it got so cold in Sudbury when Trudeau was here, he was seen with his hands in his own pockets. Is that true? Oh, man. And then there's our oil and gas. The International Energy Agency says the world will be using 60 to 100 million barrels a day, every day for the next 20 years. Where is it going to come from? Is it going to come from Saudi Arabia or Russia? Or is it going to come from the most ethical and responsible energy sector in the world, right here in Canada? I want it in Canada because I want to bring home the jobs here. You agree with that? So here's my common sense plan. I'm going to repeal Trudeau's anti-energy law. We're going to more quickly and responsibly protect our environment, but approve mines. We're going to approve natural gas liquefaction facilities to cool that gas down to minus 161 degrees Celsius, put it on a ship to Asia to shut down coal fire plants there, ship it off to Asia to Europe to break European dependence on Putin and turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people in this country. Bring it home. Bring it home. Bring it home. Oui, c'est pas bon pour l'environnement de mettre une taxe sur les gens ici. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous allons éliminer les taxes carbone que Trudeau veut imposer avec l'aide des néo-démocrates et on va promouvoir nos propres ressources ici au Canada pour que les chèques de paie soient ici, soient plus forts et soient moins imposés. Les gens ont besoin de cet argent ici et nous allons aider notre propre monde ici au Canada. Thank you. But you need a home to bring your paycheck to, right? If you don't have a home, and these days it's unbelievable. After 8 years of Trudeau, housing costs have actually doubled. In Penticton, I spoke to a housing advocate that says that seniors are living in their cars in parking lots because they're being evicted with rent increases. CTV even had a story of a nurse who now lives in her van. The tent cities, do you have a tent city here now? These were extremely rare if they existed at all 8 years ago. Now every town in Canada has a tent city because people can't afford. In Toronto, it now takes 25 years to save up for a down payment. 8 years ago, you used to be able to pay off your mortgage in 25 years. And now the interest rates are rising because government deficits are forcing up inflation, which forces up rates, and people's amortizations are stretching out. Some people now have 90-year mortgages, which means even if they gave the house and the mortgage to their kids would die possibly before ever paying them off. This is insane, and this is unprecedented in Canada. In fact, we're the worst in the G7 for house prices. Vancouver is the third most overpriced housing market in the world. Toronto is the 10th. In our border towns, you drive 15 minutes south and you can save $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 on your home purchase. So why is it so cheap in the States to buy a house when we have 1/10 the population and we have much bigger land mass? We have more supply and less demand. It should be cheap to own a home in Canada. It should be one of the cheapest places on planet Earth. So why isn't it? The answer is government bureaucracy, gatekeepers who block construction. We have the fewest houses per capita in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. Amazing stat. We built fewer homes in Canada last year than we built in 1972. Isn't that incredible? In 1972, the population of Canada was 22 million, and we built 250,000 homes. Last year, the population of Canada was 39 million, and we built 219,000 homes. So in other words, we have nearly twice the population, and we're building fewer houses. Not only that, our population is now growing 4 to 5 times faster than it was 50 years ago. This is impossible. We are heading to a major socioeconomic meltdown over the next several years as people spill into the streets. You know, I joked in Vancouver, I said, if you're 35 living with your mom, how do you bring home a date? And a lady in the crowd said, very carefully, right? That's how I did it when I was a 14-year-old, right? Don't tell my mother that, though. But truthfully, how does a young person start a family, get home equity, collateral, credit history if they can't own a home? We're going to fix this. We have a common sense plan that's going to get the gatekeepers out of the way and speed up home building. I'm going to incentivize the cities to speed up, lower the costs of permits, and free up land on which to build. I will say to the big cities, any with more than 500,000 people, you need to boost the number of building permits by 15% per year, or I will claw back some of your federal infrastructure money. Absolutely. Now, those that actually beat the 15% target are going to get building bonuses so that they can match those new homes with beautiful infrastructure. Incentives work, right? Every federally funded transit station that I contribute to will be required to have approved high-density apartments all around and on top so that our young people and our seniors can live right next to the bus and train. We're going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings. We have 37,000 big, ugly, largely empty buildings. Let's sell some of them off. Sell off thousands of acres of federal land to build, build, build. And it warms my heart to think of that beautiful family pulling up in their U-Haul to their wonderful new home in the former headquarters of the CBC. Oh. I guess they weren't kidding when they said you'll own nothing and be happy, right? We know what they're all about. We're going to build homes. We're going to get the gatekeepers out of the way. We're going to build millions of homes by supporting the trades. Sure, universities are great. Professions are excellent. I'm all for it. But we should give the same training and education dollars to the trades. Let's get more trades into our high schools to get our young people building. And we'll have tax fairness. Do you know that if you're a CEO with a private jet, you can write off the cost of your transportation? But if you are a pipe fitter who's traveling between Timmins and Fort Mac, you can't write off those costs. We've introduced the Conservative bill in the House of Commons, tax fairness for traveling trades workers, which will allow our trades workers to write off the full cost of transportation, accommodation, and lodging so that they can travel to the place to build things, move things, and fix things while keeping more money in their pocket. Tax fairness. And while I'm on the subject of tax fairness, there's another Conservative bill I'm very proud of which brings tax fairness to our family businesses. Used to be you get punished if you sold your business to your kid, but you were encouraged to sell it to a stranger. Conservatives have passed a bill through the House and Senate, but with some support from the other parties, believe it or not, that will allow the family business to transfer the business down the generations without paying any tax penalty. We need to reward family businesses in this country. But you know what the biggest complaint I was getting from family businesses in Timmins? Crime. Right in the inner city. They're actually moving their businesses out of the downtown of Timmins. I was walking out of an arena where I'd been there for a little coffee with our local volunteers, and a guy walked in who owns a sports store. He was in his store at 4 a.m. because his phone went off from his alarm company. He'd been burglarized 4 times in 2 years and 7 times in 10 years. A little girl actually stepped on a syringe, a dirty syringe, in a children's park. This is becoming commonplace. In Toronto, a beautiful middle-aged mother was hit with a stray bullet fired out of a safe consumption site. Doesn't sound very safe to me. And that gun was held by a criminal who had multiple prior convictions and was out of jail despite 16 violations of his probation orders. What was he doing on the street? It's insane. This is the catch and release policy of Justin Trudeau. And the data came out today from Stats Canada showing there has been a 39% increase in violent crime since he became Prime Minister and repealed the previous Conservative justice policy. And this is the consequence we're getting on the streets of Vancouver. They had to arrest the same 40 offenders 6,000 times. That's 150 arrests per criminal per year. The police have an expression. It's called FIDO. Forget it, drive on. They see a crime and they just drive, and it's not their fault. It's because if they grab the guy, they know he's going to be back on the street in 90 minutes on bail. And by the way, FIDO doesn't stand for forget it. There's another word they use. But our police, our courageous police, are going out into the streets doing their jobs for us, and the police, they tell us the stories of the criminal in the back seat, laughing at them, So this is a taxi ride. They get to go into prison, have a nice lunch, get out on bail by afternoon, reoffend. If they kept those 40 criminals off the streets in Vancouver, you'd have 6,000 fewer crime victims. Isn't that incredible? Good news is we don't have a lot of criminals in Canada. The bad news is they're very productive, right? So here's my common sense plan. We're going to repeal catch and release and bring in jail and not bail. Jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders. Jail, not bail. But don't worry about crime, because Justin Trudeau's going to ban hunting, right? He's going to stop the hunters in Sudbury and Nunavut, and that's going to end. I actually asked him what he was going to do about the stabbings that are happening. He actually said he was going to ban guns. Seriously? Is he going to ban butter knives? Make no mistake, if Justin Trudeau and the NDP get their way, they will ban every single civilian firearm. That is their extreme radical woke agenda. That's the plan. He tried. You saw him come forward with 300 pages of amendments, 300 pages of hunting rifles that he wanted to ban. But we stood up and fought back. He still passed his bill, his ridiculous bill. He still banned BB guns, paint guns, airsoft guns, right? And by the way, since this agenda started, he said he was going to make us all safe from gun crime. The data is out today. Hot off the presses, Statistics Canada, since Trudeau became Prime Minister, violent gun crime is up 101%, right? Here's why. Criminals don't follow gun laws. You don't stop to get a possession and an acquisition license on the way to robbing a bank. The people who have a PAL or an RPAL are statistically proven to be the least likely to use a gun in the commission of a crime. It is stolen guns and it is smuggled guns from the United States of America that are actually causing the problem. So here is my common sense plan. We're going to repeal Trudeau's attack on our hunters and professional sport shooters, and we're going to put the money into reinforcing our border to keep the illegal guns out. Doesn't that make sense? Common sense. Do you hear about the robbery that happened in Ottawa? How bad it's got? The robber walks up to this guy, says, "Give me all your money." The guy says, "Wait a second here. Do you know who I am? I'm Justin Trudeau." The robber said, "Well, in that case, give me all my money." The drug crisis is really appalling, though. We see it on our. Do you have that here? Yeah, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. Yeah, that's the real pandemic now, isn't it? It's spreading wild. We know how it all started. The corrupt pharmaceutical companies pushed their opioids on the medical system. They lied to the doctors. They said, "This is harmless stuff. Give it to your patients for every ache and pain." It's called OxyContin. It'll make them feel better. And you know what? It did. It made people feel great until they got hooked on it. And then they had to graduate up to more powerful drugs. This happened to all kinds of people. It didn't discriminate. High income, low income, people from good families with good values got mercilessly hooked on these powerful molecules. They ended up taking fentanyl, and 30,000 people have lost their lives to drug overdoses in the last 8 years alone. We see it on the streets of every city, people lying face down, their spines twisted after standing in awkward positions after taking these lethal drugs for a very long time. Every single time they take a hit of it, they risk losing their lives. Now, Trudeau's policy has been to sign off on British Columbia's plan to decriminalize crack, heroin, and other hard drugs. Now, what has been the consequence of this? The number of overdoses is up 300% in British Columbia. Nationwide, it's up 184%. And now he uses our tax dollars to to give the pharmaceutical companies more money and buy heroin-grade opioids that he calls safe. But they're not safe. Those drugs are not strong enough. Though they're strong as heroin, they're not strong enough to satisfy the addiction, so the addict sells them to kids and uses the money to buy even more powerful drugs. The kids get hooked, and they get bored of those drugs, and they sell them to other kids, and on the cycle goes. Ladies and gentlemen, this does not make sense. It is not working. My common sense plan is to take the money away from tax-funded opioids and put it into recovery, detox, and treatment to bring home our loved ones drug-free. I went to a beautiful place. It's called the Oak Foundation. They have a center in Winnipeg. Bruce Oak lost his son tragically to an overdose. Sorry, Scott Oak lost his son Bruce to an overdose in Calgary. So he built this facility in Winnipeg. And that place allows the young men to come in, get counseling, detox, fitness, yoga, sweat lodges for First Nations. They prepare a work plan so that they can get a job and support their families when they get out. They're building an apartment building right next door so graduates can live right nearby, get more treatment if they need it, and even mentor the incoming addicts. These are the kinds of things that work. They have a high success rate. They give people their lives and their dignity back. My friends, there is hope for a better life. This is what we need to do. This is where we will put our money because we want to bring home our loved ones drug-free, and we know that we can do it. I told you at the outset we'd have a dollar-for-dollar law to source every penny that we spend. Here's my common sense plan. The Americans sued the pharmaceutical companies for the opioid crisis and got $54 billion. I'm going to sue those companies here. We're going to collect millions and billions and put that money into treatment to reverse the crisis they caused. Absolutely. There is a better way. And that better way in this country is to restore our freedom again. Our freedom has been under attack by this Prime Minister who saw the last 3 years as an opportunity to make the state bigger and the country smaller. That's why he's always insulting Canada. That's why he deleted Terry Fox, Quebec City, the victory at Vimy, and countless other beautiful historical moments from our passport. It's why he said in his Canada Day message that the great thing about Canada is not that we're the best country in the world, but that one day we could be. What kind of prime minister doesn't believe his country is the best? Why does he always call our people belittling names? Small fringe minority, he calls. He hectors people. He calls people horrible names. Wags his finger. You know, this from a guy who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, dressing up in ugly costumes, thinks that he has the ability to go around insulting the people as though he's morally superior. But there's a reason why he talks down the country. There's a reason, because he can make the country feel small, then he can make himself big. If he can make our history go away, then he'll have a blank slate to create whatever he wants. Unhindered power for him and less freedom for everybody else. Utopia, right? You know, utopia is the Greek word for no place. It doesn't exist anywhere, but they ask us to believe in it so that we'll give them infinite powers over our lives. Well, I've got news for them. We're going to protect our freedom in this country. We're going to stand up for the freedom that the soldiers fought and died for. That freedom is ours. We will repeal C-11, the censorship law, and bring back free speech online. We will not allow a mandatory digital ID in our country. I will ban all of my MPs and ministers from any involvement in the World Economic Forum. And the money that we stop giving to foreign dictators, we will bring it home to reinvest and rebuild the Canadian Armed Forces. His whole philosophy is based on the idea that he and a small group around him know better. This is his view of human nature. People cannot be trusted to make decisions for themselves, but some people can be trusted to make decisions for everybody. How does that make sense? How does that? It's not actually collectivist. They do believe in the individual themselves. They believe in one individual deciding for everybody, right? That is the idea that they believe in, because they say the ordinary people are not wise or virtuous enough to decide for themselves. So Justin Trudeau needs to decide what our children learn. Justin Trudeau believes he needs to decide what to do with our money. He believes he gets to decide how our economy works, because the so-called ordinary people can't decide for themselves. Well, I've got news for him. I have had 100 of these rallies, and I line up next to the flag at the end of each one and shake hands with every single person who wants to meet me. I have met these so-called ordinary people, and they are not ordinary. They are extraordinary, my friends. The waitress who balances 10 plates on a tray, serves 15 customers at once, comes home at the end of a long day to help her kid with math and balances her budget on a minimum wage salary. She is not ordinary. She is extraordinary, my friends. The farmer who masters the sciences of the sky and the soil to bring food from his field to your fork is not ordinary. He is extraordinary. The electrician who captures lightning from the sky and runs it through a copper wire to illuminate this room, he is not ordinary either. He is extraordinary. These extraordinary people, when they die, their names do not appear in newspaper headlines. Words are not spoken in Parliament, but as they walk through heaven's gates, the trumpets sound for them. Because God only knows that they carried their families, their friends, and their nations on their backs. And out goes a song from the angels, there goes greatness. These great people deserve to be masters and not servants in their country. It is the common sense of the common people united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home. Thank you.
Isn't he incredible? So as you heard, Pierre is not rushing out. He is going to stand there. You guys can line up, start that way, and head towards